The Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC, says there are 508 registered political parties who will be contesting in the upcoming local government elections. At least 62 of these parties were registered after last year's elections. The Commission held a media briefing yesterday to update the public on its preparedness for the upcoming elections. The Commission said they are still in consultation with Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Velinkosini Hlabisa on a date for the elections, but they are ready for every possible scenario. For more on this, we're joined by the IEC's Deputy Electoral Officer, Masego Sheburi, who joins us now. Masego, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate you joining us then this morning. Considering we don't have a date, can we truly say we're ready?
We are preparing to be ready whenever the date is called. But the fact that there is no date does not hinder our preparations. We know from the law that the term of the current municipalities subsists for 5 years, and then once that term ends, an election must be held within 90 days of that date. So we know there is a window period within which elections are to be held. On our part, we are making preparations to be ready on the first day of that window period, so that if the minister exercises a discretion to call an election on any Wednesday in that window period, we are ready and we can administer elections as they are lawfully called. So in the fullness of time, we will be ready, but our planning is based on an earliest date within the legally prescribed period to hold elections.
Are you able to just share that window? And I know it's not a specific date or anything of that sort, but if you're able to just share that window and time frame for us.
Indeed. The law provides that a term of a municipal council subsists for 5 years. The current municipal councils were elected on the 1st of November 2021. So their 5-year term will end on the 1st of November 2026. So from the 2nd of November 2026, an election must be held, but it cannot be held beyond the 90 date from the 2nd of November. So the latest date on which an election may be lawfully called is the 30th of January 2027. So that is the window period. If we accept that elections have always been held on a Wednesday, it could be any of the Wednesdays between the 4th of November 2024 up to the 27th of January 2027. Each Wednesday is possible. However, there are a number of benefits and there are a number of disadvantages because we must factor in the exam period by the matriculants, we must factor in university students, we must factor in the suboptimal months of late December and early January, where people are displaced from their places of ordinary residence, having moved for holiday and those type of things. And you can't hold an election in that context because it may just suppress turnout of voters.
What happens if government, if a call is for the elections to happen a little bit earlier, considering all the factors you've just named? Would that be possible?
It is notionally possible for an election to be held before the 2nd of November 2026. However, for that to happen, all municipal councils must take resolutions to dissolve themselves before their term ends. So it is notionally possible for an election to be held earlier than the 90-day window period, which starts at the beginning of November 2026 and ends no later than the 30th of January 2027.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think a very, very important update with regards to that timing. You made note of the parties that have been registered over the last year or so, the last 2 years, and of course since the last local government elections themselves. How do we talk about ghost parties and the proliferation that may be possible thereof? Ultimately, those are parties that are registered but inactive or misleading in their intent. Are you able to dissect and share that and have that sorted before the time comes for these elections?
As we speak, there are 508 registered political parties, the majority of which, about just under 300, are parties that are registered at a national level. Registration at that level entitles a party to contest for seats in the National Assembly, for seats in any of the legislatures, as well as for seats in the municipal councils. The mere fact that the party is registered does not mean it will end up on the ballot. It will still have to meet the contesting requirements in terms of the Municipal Electoral Act. In other words, it must still nominate candidates, it must still pay a deposit, it must still submit the necessary administrative documents. Only once it has met those requirements will it end up on the ballot paper. The issue of parties in a multi-party democracy is that they should offer people choice. But if a party exists only in name and does not contest elections, that party has an obligation to inform the Commission of its continued existence at the beginning of each year. And if that a party fails to do so, it stands the risk of being deregistered. Earlier this year, in March, the Commission deregistered 152 political parties that were registered but never contested any elections linked to their sphere of registration. So there are measures in place to deregister inactive political parties.
Yeah. All right. Very interesting, actually, as well. How are you leveraging technology to enhance transparency, trust, etc., in these upcoming elections? Because that has been a conversation that you've had even at a summit earlier this year, I believe, in Cape Town, where the conversation around technology and maybe even voting booths being technologically enhanced also was a key part of that conversation. Where are we there?
If you consider the penetration of internet access to smart devices around South Africa, the trajectory is on an up. So it is unavoidable that we must begin the conversations to say, if citizens are transacting increasingly using digital platforms, should we not extend the same convenience even for voting? So with that in mind, we held a seminar earlier this year in Cape Town to present the findings of our research on the feasibility of introducing technology in elections. The views of citizens, the views of specialists were that indeed technology may be introduced, but there are a number of footpaths that must first occur before we go full-blown implementation of technology. One is that we must build trust among citizens and electoral stakeholders. And we build trust by showing that the technology works, by showing that the technology is inclusive. It will not impact people based on demographics or whether the rural or urban divide, whether it worsens that or what.
Yeah.
Thirdly, that there must be a clear legal framework that undergirds the implementation of technology.
Sure.
However, we are also mindful that technology is never neutral. So we must be guided in the choice of the technology that we make so that we do not end up removing the safeguards that we have in our current manual system when we introduce technology. And lastly, that technology must introduce more efficiencies. So there's no point in adopting technologies if you're not offering voters better efficiencies on voting day.
Yeah, fully understandable. Let's just talk about the logistical complexities, especially when one understands that we live in a slightly more fragmented political landscape, one might say, especially in municipalities that have historically had a low voter turnout. How are you preparing for the logistical complexities thereof overall?
Indeed, turnout or voter participation is one of the key indicators of the health of a democracy. All of us must be worried about the declining rates of participation with each ensuing election. Our civic education is continuous. Our voter education is continuous. Increasingly, when we interact with communities, people tell us, your electoral system is simple. I know how to make my mark. The big question is, why must I continue to be invested in a democracy as a preferred method of arranging our public affairs? So that's the question that all of us need to answer. On our part, without decampaigning anyone, we must be able to say democracy offers you an opportunity to select people who will administer our public affairs, and that participation in election has meaning because it impacts how you interact with the state and how your daily life is impacted. We are, however, heartened that this year, even without an election being announced, we have been able to register over 300,000 new voters, the majority of whom are young persons who've taken advantage of our ease of use platforms to register themselves as voters. Additionally, over 60,000 persons have updated their registration details. In other words, a person went on the portal, inspected their address details, and found that there is a mismatch between where they reside and where they registered, and they updated those details on the portal. We've just concluded market research, which will inform our campaign for next year.
Yeah.
So once we finalize the campaign, we will launch the campaign.
Sure.
And at the heart of the campaign, it must respond to the mood among the South African people. It must respond to those who do not intend to vote and give them a reason to vote. Those who have always voted but may not want to vote in the next election, we must continue to speak to them and give them a reason still to believe in democracy as a form, as I said, of arranging public affairs.
Yeah, still very, very important conversations to be had around voting in the country. Voter apathy, as you made note of, being a key proponent of that. Masego Sheburi, the IEC's Deputy Electoral Officer, really appreciate your time as we talk about the readiness to host those local government elections, which are scheduled for at least a time frame of around the 2nd of November to the 31st of January 2027. But that's just the 90-day period in which it is likely, can happen before, can happen a little bit there in between as well.